Because one of the things I've seen people getting really excited about with ChatGPT is its ability to synthesize a large amount of text written or transcribed from one person. So I guess that's different to what we've been talking about, where a code frame for market research is usually coming from lots of different people, but with quite short verbatims for each person. So when you're looking at a lot of text from one person, for example, in the context of market research, that might be a transcript from a depth interview and asking the AI to summarize it. And obviously that can be really useful to the researcher because it can save a lot of time in terms of potentially summarizing the key points from the discussion. So, what are your thoughts on that as an application of GPT and other large language models? Is that something that you're excited by? You see a lot of possibility for? Any advice for doing that effectively?
Yeah, so I think large language models have a really, really excellent capacity for summarization. So I think this is a really good application of it, especially when you're talking about a cohesive text. So such as, like you mentioned, an interview with a single person. That's something that is amenable to summarization because there sort of are things are consistent and there are usually core themes that the person is getting at or that are discussed within the interview. So yeah, I think this is a really exciting application, and it's actually even more exciting considering a lot of parallel advances. So for example, like in the accuracy of automatic speech recognition. So now there's models such as Whisper that are able to deal with a lot of different languages and a lot of dialects and other challenges that until now have been really hard for AI to sort of accurately translate into text what people are saying. So with those things combined, it's I think a lot more accurate. And we are able to easily get summaries of long conversations. And not only that, but I think one of the really cool things about large language models is you can kind of just feed in a whole bunch of text, let's say from an interview, and then ask a question about the text. So you can say, like, what were if you're just trying to summarize, then maybe you would just say like sort of what were some of the key points that were mentioned within the conversation. But let's say maybe you're dealing with 100 different people and you want to analyze each interview, but then it occurs to you like, I want to know what did everyone have a strong emotion about this particular aspect of the product that we're talking about? So you can pose that question to an AI model after the fact. And if that was discussed within each of those conversations, then the AI will be able to pull out or will be able to answer the question that you're posing with respect to the interview data that you've fed it in. So I think that in particular is a really cool application.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting because that kind of leads into the next thing I was going to talk to you about, which is, the extent to which AI can move beyond summarization into analysis or interpretation. Because I guess for summarization, it's working as an aid to the researcher to make their task a bit simpler, but it's still the researcher who is then doing the analysis, interpretation, kind of reporting back to their client with the recommendations. Do you see the AI at a stage or getting to a stage potentially soon where it can do more in terms of the actual analysis of the data?
Yeah, really interesting question. I think broadly speaking, I see that there's kind of two approaches here, and each one has its own challenges and benefits. So sort of the simpler one is about kind of enabling more context-specific insights. And so what I just mentioned maybe is a particular example of that. And this is really about providing tools to researchers that are more adaptive than they may have been in the past. And they can be more customizable for a particular researcher's needs. And maybe they do require some development and customization. But it means we're going to get the proliferation of really bespoke analytical tools that, again, maybe they still require some work to build, but now they're a lot easier to build than they ever would have been in the past and a lot smarter. So these kind of assistive tools or assistive technologies, they're going to be harder to generalize, but you also get sort of, they're interpretable in a certain sense, and researchers can use them in a way that makes sense for them. Another, I think, really interesting application, which I haven't seen too many people talking about as yet, would be kind of training a model on the end-to-end task of insight management. So actually trying to emulate what insight managers are doing. And this can be very, very complex. You have to consider all the different stakeholders. There's many factors. You have to think about long-term impacts, as well as the sort of the history and philosophy of the brand or the company that you're talking about. So this could be something that's very hard to build, but on the other hand, could be very generalizable and could bring immense value. And I think we're beginning to see at the early stages technology that's able to do things like this. So, for example, within the last few months, there was a model released called Cicero, and Cicero is an expert at playing the game of diplomacy. So you can look this up for a bit more information. But what's really cool is that this kind of demonstrates the capacity of modern AI systems to engage in nuanced conversations and to actually make strategic policy decisions accordingly. So actually building that for the purpose of insight management, that's going to be very challenging. And I think especially getting the data that would be necessary in order to do that, that's going to be quite tricky. But I think it's sort of within the scope of modern AI systems to potentially be able to do something where they're actually really able to engage in conversations with people, with managers, with stakeholders that are making these decisions and really inform those decisions.